You will be my fourth wife. Elder Richard Blackburn's voice echoed through the small school office. The smell of varnished wood mingled with the expensive cologne he wore. Emma Brooks felt ice run down her spine as her fingers whitened around the pen she held. The tick-tock of the clock seemed deafening in the silence that followed. Sister Brooks, you don't need to answer now. I know it's an unexpected blessing. He smiled, his blue eyes fixed on her with that unshakable certainty of someone who had never heard a no. For an instant, Emma perceived a poorly disguised loneliness behind that authority. The Council of Patriarchs had a revelation. God desires you in my house. The silver hummingbird brooch that Emma wore on her collar seemed to weigh a ton. It had belonged to her mother. It was all that remained of her. Emma swallowed hard, her throat so parched it hurt. Brother Blackburn, I need to pray about this, she managed to say, the words almost breaking. Richard ran his hand through the gray hair at his temples, a gesture that made him seem almost vulnerable. For an instant, his mask fell, and Emma glimpsed the insecure boy he must have been. Of course. He quickly recomposed himself. But don't take too long. The wedding will be in 3 weeks after the harvest. Without waiting for an answer, he stood and left, leaving behind the sound of his heavy boots. Alone, Emma let the pen fall. At 28, she was the only woman in Havens Valley with formal education, the only one who had permission to teach instead of dedicating herself exclusively to the home like all the others. That special authorization had come after years of her father's pleas, one of the original founders of Havens Valley, before he died in the mine accident. My daughter has a gift, he had argued before the Council of Elders. To deny this would be like rejecting a gift from the Creator himself. Even so, 3 years of evaluations and spiritual tests were needed before Prophet Tyler granted the rare permission. Emma remembered that night when her father came home with the news. Her mother cried not with joy but with fear. They will watch her constantly, she whispered. Every word, every gesture. She'll never be able to just be herself. The next morning, she had pinned the hummingbird brooch to little Emma's collar. To remember that some are born to fly, she said enigmatically. 15 years ago, Prophet Tyler had gathered all the 10-year-old children for a test. You have a sharp mind but a docile heart, the prophet had said. The Lord can use this. Since then, her life had followed a different path. While other girls learned household chores, preparing for marriages at 16, Emma studied under strict surveillance. Everything designed to form a teacher who would perpetuate the values of Havens Valley. Every book she read first passed through the scrutiny of the Committee of Virtues. Pages considered impure were removed, replaced with approved interpretations. Science was taught only to the point where it didn't contradict the community's sacred texts. History ended the moment their ancestors founded Havens Valley, fleeing from the corruption of the outside world. The office door opened. It was Abigail, Richard's third wife, a woman of only 22 who already carried in her eyes the exhaustion of someone who had lived too much. He already told you, didn't he? Abigail asked, quickly closing the door. About the marriage. Emma nodded, wordless. Diane won't accept this easily, Abigail commented, referring to the first wife. She hesitated, nervously playing with her dress sleeve. You know, he wasn't always like this. What do you mean? Emma asked, surprised. Richard, before becoming an elder. He was gentle, you know. He played guitar at the summer bonfires. Abigail looked out the window. Then power changed him. Or maybe it just revealed who he always was. Why are you telling me this? Abigail approached, lowering her voice to a whisper. Because you're different. You know how to read, study. She paused, looking deep into Emma's eyes. Have you ever thought about leaving here? Emma's heart raced. Of course she had thought about it thousands of times, since that first time at 14, when she had found an old newspaper in the lining of a box sent by distant relatives. The photos showed women in universities, wearing lab coats, driving cars, speaking at podiums. A world so different, it seemed, like fiction. "That's not something we should discuss," she replied cautiously. "That's exactly what they want us to think," Abigail retorted, a sudden fire in her eyes. "That we can't even talk about it." "The walls have ears in Havens Valley," Emma warned. Abigail nodded. "Think about it, and maybe we can talk somewhere else." In the following days, Emma tried to avoid Abigail, but it was impossible during the wedding preparations supervised by Diane, Richard's first wife. "You will wear the traditional dress," Diane informed during a sewing session. "No adornments, no vanities." Emma observed Jessica, the second wife, pregnant with her sixth child, and Abigail, who shot her meaningful glances. Jessica almost never spoke. Her eyes seemed always fixed on some distant point, as if she had created a refuge within herself where no one else could enter. The rare moments when her voice was heard happened only when she spoke to her children. A melodious and soft voice that seemed to belong to another person, not that silent woman with cautious gestures. "Richard wishes you to continue teaching until you're expecting your first child," Diane continued, her knitting needles clicking like the metronome of a sentence. "Then your place will be at home." "It's very kind of him," Emma replied automatically. "It's your duty," Diane corrected, "as we'll be abandoning those worldly books you keep hidden." Emma's blood froze. The books hidden under the floorboards were her only link to the outside world. A worn copy of Pride and Prejudice, a high school science manual, and an old world atlas, treasures obtained over years, secretly traded for medicines she prepared with herbs gathered in the mountains. Each page was a breath of fresh air, a window to a world she might never know. That night, sleepless in her cabin, Emma contemplated her non-existent options when she heard a light tap on the window. Abigail gestured urgently from outside. In the community greenhouse, protected by the strong smell of herbs that masked their voices, Abigail was direct. "There's a way out. The garbage collector, Greg. He comes on Wednesdays, collects trash from isolated communities." "The garbage man?" Emma frowned. "How do you know this?" "Jessica's sister tried to escape with him years ago. They were caught. She was forced into marriage with an old man as punishment. She died in childbirth a year later." A chill ran through Emma. She vaguely remembered the story, told in whispers by older women as a warning to younger ones. The apostate, as they called her, whose real name was never mentioned. It was said her spirit wandered the mountains, lamenting her rebellion. A legend created to frighten, to control. "Why would it work for us?" Abigail pulled out a bundle of bills from a secret pocket in her dress. 3 years of savings. Greg helps people escape for money. It's enough to get to Salt Lake City. "How did you get this money?" Emma asked, impressed. "I sold crafts to the supply caravans," Abigail explained. She hesitated then, "And I stole from Richard when he was sleeping, a few bills at a time." "When is the truck's next visit?" "Tomorrow, at dawn." "It's very risky," Emma argued. Images of the apostate invaded her mind. The nameless woman whose disobedience had been erased from official history, remaining only as a cautionary tale. "We don't have time." Abigail moved her hair from her neck, revealing purple marks. "He has these moments. Then he cries like a child, asks for my forgiveness. Says he's trying to be the man his father was." Emma felt nauseous. The rumors about Richard Blackburn's temperament were whispered in the darkest corners of Havens Valley. Stories of closed doors and silenced screams, of discipline that exceeded any reasonable limit, even by the community's standards. And now those marks on Abigail's neck confirmed everything. What about Jessica? "She knows about the plan. She'll give us cover. She'll say I went to wash clothes at the river and that you went to prepare materials at the school." "How would we do it?" Abigail explained. The truck arrived at 5:30, stopped at the community dumpster before reaching the houses. Greg always checked the trash to separate recyclables. We would hide in the larger container. When he opens it, we come out and beg for help. "What if he turns us into the council?" "I have this." Abigail showed an envelope. Letters from Richard to a politician about agreements to keep authorities away from here. If anything happens to us, they go to the police. How did you get that? I clean his office. He thinks I'm too stupid to read. Abigail smiled bitterly. The men here confuse silence with stupidity. Let's do it, Emma decided. That night was the longest of Emma's life. Sitting on the edge of the bed, she contemplated her few belongings, deciding what to take. The small diary where she noted thoughts she would never dare say aloud. A yellowed photograph of her parents, and of course the hummingbird brooch. She looked around the simple room that had been her home for years, the wooden walls that knew her most secret dreams, the window through which she had so often observed the mountains, imagining what lay beyond them. She reached under the loose floorboard and retrieved her forbidden books. She hesitated, knowing it would be impossible to take them. They were too large, would draw attention. With a heavy heart, she opened Pride and Prejudice one last time, reading the underlined sentence that had so often been her comfort. I cannot fix on the hour, or the spot, or the look, or the words, which laid the foundation. It is too long ago. I was in the middle before I knew that I had begun. Elizabeth Bennet seemed to speak directly to her through time and pages. Carefully, she returned the books to their hiding place. Perhaps someday, another young woman would find them, and also dream of freedom. At the following dawn, with her heart hammering against her ribs, Emma met Abigail behind the greenhouse. Dew soaked the hems of their dresses as they walked crouched to the disposal area. Which one? Emma whispered, her breath forming clouds in the cold air. The biggest one, where they put the regular trash bags. Abigail pointed to a green container. We need to get in and cover ourselves with empty bags. Emma hesitated, her nose wrinkling at the nauseating smell. Will it work? It has to work, Abigail replied, already moving. In the container, the smell of decomposition was suffocating. Emma felt her stomach turn as they positioned themselves among the trash bags. Abigail rearranged some empty bags, creating a hiding place. Minutes dragged on. Emma heard every leaf moved by the wind, every bird awakening, her own blood pulsing in her ears. Finally, the rumble of a diesel engine approaching. It's him, Abigail whispered, squeezing Emma's hand so hard that her fingers went numb. Don't make a sound until he opens it completely. The truck stopped. Doors slammed. Footsteps approached. The container lid was opened and morning light invaded the space. A middle-aged man looked inside, clearly surprised. Jesus Christ, he exclaimed, stepping back. Abigail signaled for silence. Please, we need help. We have money. Greg looked around nervously. Are you crazy? If they catch us... They won't catch us, Emma interrupted. Please. I'm about to be forced into marriage. I'm pregnant, Abigail lied. Not by my husband. He'll kill me when he finds out. The man ran his hand through his graying hair. Damn. It's not the first time. You know they send retrievers, right? We have this. Abigail showed the envelope and money. Suddenly, the sound of an engine approaching. Headlights cut through the morning mist. Quick, hide. Greg pushed them back into the container, partially closing the lid. Through the crack, Emma saw Richard get out of a pickup truck with two security brothers. Her heart seemed to stop. Good morning, Greg greeted, trying to sound casual. Just doing the usual collection. Richard didn't respond immediately. His eyes surveyed the area like a predator sniffing. Did you see anyone around here? 2 women are missing. Emma felt Abigail trembling violently beside her. A rat ran over her foot, and she had to bite her lip until she tasted the metallic flavor of blood to keep from screaming. No, sir, I just arrived. Richard took a few steps toward the container. Emma could feel his gaze like a physical weight. Are you sure? This area isn't regularly monitored. With all due respect, who would want to meet near the garbage? Greg laughed nervously. Richard continued staring at the container. Suddenly, his radio crackled. Elder Blackburn? We have something here. Wet clothes by the river. Momentary relief went through Emma. Jessica was creating a distraction. Richard hesitated, clearly conflicted. "Continue your work," he said finally. "But if you see anything suspicious, report immediately." The pickup truck left. Greg opened the container. Now or never, he'll figure out the river trick in minutes. They ran to the truck. Greg helped them into a tight compartment behind the cabin, closing the metal door. "Stay quiet. Salt Lake City is 4 hours from here." In the dark, Emma and Abigail embraced. The truck began to move. Suddenly, it stopped abruptly. Male voices, outside. "Sorry, Greg, I need to check the truck," said Richard's voice. Emma froze. Abigail squeezed her hand so hard she felt the bones almost breaking. "Any problem?" Greg asked, sounding surprisingly calm. "Standard procedure when members are missing," Richard replied. "Won't take long." Emma heard footsteps circling. The truck, doors being opened and closed. A light went through a small crack in the compartment where they were. So close she could hear Richard's breathing on the other side of the metal wall. "What's this?" Richard asked. "My tools," Greg replied. "That compartment has been stuck for months, would need a special wrench to open." Silence. Emma felt she was going to faint from holding her breath so long. "You seem nervous, Greg," Richard observed. "Something you should tell me?" "Just anxious. To finish my route, sir. I have many stops today." Another moment of excruciating silence. "Very well, you can go." The truck began moving again. Emma and Abigail didn't dare breathe normally until they were miles away. "I almost couldn't believe it when he gave up checking this compartment," Abigail whispered. "He didn't give up," Emma replied, feeling something under her feet. "Look." It was a broken wrench. Greg lied. "This compartment can be opened easily." "Then why?" "Richard let us go," Emma realized, stunned. "Impossible," Abigail contested. "He would never." "He heard everything." Emma suddenly understood. "When you talked about being pregnant, about him killing you, he heard and chose not to see. Why? Why would he do that?" Emma remembered Richard's look when he announced the marriage. That momentary loneliness behind the arrogance. Maybe there's still something left of that man who played guitar at summer bonfires. The truck continued along the winding road, descending the mountain. Somewhere ahead was Salt Lake City, and beyond it, an entire world that neither of them knew. A frightening world, but also full of possibilities. "Will we make it?" Abigail whispered, her voice almost lost in the engine noise. Emma touched the hummingbird brooch. "We're flying now," she replied, "like hummingbirds." The truck accelerated along the road that wound around the mountain. Emma felt the brooch's metal warm against her skin, as if it were coming alive. For the first time since she could remember, she breathed without the weight of the community in her lungs. Somewhere behind them, Richard Blackburn was returning to Havens Valley, to his 2 remaining wives, and to the role the community had forced him to play. In his pocket, she knew he would carry a note he would find later, written by Abigail, strategically left in his coat. "There is another way, Richard. There always is." Emma didn't know if those words would find the man behind the mask. Maybe not. But today, somehow, he had given them wings, even if for reasons they would never fully understand. The road stretched ahead, uncertain and full of challenges. But for the first time, it was a road they themselves had chosen. Did you enjoy this story? Follow the channel and share to receive more exciting stories like this.